Megyn Kelly and Glen Greenwald exposes a campaign to destroy Tucker Carlson by revealing how media operatives keep dragging him and Nick Fuentes into narratives that have nothing to do with him. So Megyn Kelly explains that the attacks are politically motivated, while Glen Greenwald outlines how Nick Fuentes is reportedly used as a convenient tool for guilt by association. Now, as Megyn Kelly breaks down, the whole strategic smearing, Glen Greenwald adds that critics amplify people like Nick Fuentes and even Tucker Carlson only when it helps them to shape a particular premeditated narrative. So Megyn Kelly is highlighting a pattern of selective outrage, and Glen Greenwald also details how the differences to Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson spike whenever establishment figures need a distraction. So here's Megyn Kelly on the Megyn Kelly Show with Glen Greenwald as they expose a campaign to destroy Tucker Carlson. Let's go ahead and get right into it.
He is under just an insane amount of pressure right now over his Fuentes interview, over his podcast, and it's getting truly crazy. It's really getting crazy. And you pointed out this article in the New York Times, which hit Saturday, entitled "J.D. Vance is Idling at the Edges of American Politics." And you wrote this. Very shortly, you're going to hear this from Democrats in the media. Look, I had disagreements with Trump, but he kept the crazies on the fringes. The really dangerous extremist is J.D. Vance. Trump, by comparison, is a responsible patriot. That's the Bush-Cheney trajectory. And you tweeted out this article. To me, I think 95% of the pressure that's raining down on Tucker right now is as a result of his close friendship with J.D. Vance, because they fear and loathe him in a particularly pointed way. And they think if they can stank up Tucker enough, they can then transfer it onto JD, thus improving their electoral chances in 2028. Your thoughts on it?
No question, Democrats hate J.D. Vance, fear J.D. Vance, as I would too if I were a partisan Democrat. But I think it's important to note that most of the attacks on Tucker are not coming from liberals or Democrats. They are coming from factions within the conservative,
the neocon right.
Exactly. And that, if it were just the, liberals and Democrats, it wouldn't matter. Tucker wouldn't even bat an eye. It wouldn't, it's when it comes from your own movement inside your own faction and your own party when it really becomes something quite notable and difficult to navigate. And here's the thing, Megyn, when Tucker was on Fox and had the highest rated show on Fox up until the day that he was fired, I don't think I ever heard a prominent conservative criticize Tucker. Probably not because they didn't disagree with him. I'm sure they did, but because he was so popular that nobody would. In fact, when Tucker was fired, I think people have forgotten this, there were a bunch of members of the Senate, Republicans in the Senate, who ran to Politico and said how happy they were that Tucker was gone because now they could more easily fund the war in Ukraine, which Tucker was a major voice in opposing. And they all did it, though, anonymously. These are members of the Senate who wanted to criticize Tucker and say how happy they were gone, but only did so anonymously. So that shows his power within the conservative movement. The only thing that has changed is that since October 7th, like a lot of people, he's begun to focus on the relationship with the United States and Israel, questioning why we give them so much money, why we pay for their wars, why we deploy our military to protect Israel in their wars, why are politicians constantly going there, why we're introducing censorship regimes and laws inside the United States to protect this foreign country. That's the only thing that's different between the Tucker of now and the Tucker of then. And so this concern and an intense campaign to destroy Tucker, and I agree absolutely by proxy to try and either get J.D. Vance to renounce Tucker or present him with the choice, renounce Tucker or be destroyed with him, is all about demanding that J.D. Vance embrace the neocon ideology in general and their love and support and loyalty to Israel in particular, because there's no other way to isolate or understand these attacks on Tucker except by reference to that.
And that's definitely spot on because, you know what? People started asking, okay, no, let me back up. think back in 2024, people are wondering why are we sending money to a bunch of these countries and everything, and we're not being supporting our own here. You know, we got people struggling, inflation's happening at the time. What else? Unemployment, and yet they're not being assisted, but at the same time, other nations are looking to go ahead and just benefit from the money that's from taxpayer money that's supposed to be for the taxpayers themselves. Okay, so at first it was people stating that that the government is actually claiming that we're just going to go ahead and support these nations because, well, they're allies and stuff. But the reality is, like, people started saying that, they're just doing this because they want to protect their own interests, but never said what those interests were. And now we find out whose interests that we're talking about, the interests of those from the land that Ben Shapiro loved, or who the people that Ben Shapiro loved to be around. Okay. And the fact of the matter is that when people started learning about that and realized that, that's when they started going ahead and backing off that narrative and no longer supporting the particular narrative that they're putting out there to support the land that Ben Shapiro loves. Okay. And we're seeing that at higher numbers now. Okay. And that's actually understandable. Now we're seeing that, all of this money is going to a land that Shapiro loves so much. And yet, at the same time, we're not benefiting from this at all. We're still suffering. We still, have people who are struggling, make ends meet. Cost of living is getting higher and everything. And then also, the inflation, even though, things are getting better economically, people are still out here suffering because of the different roadblocks and everything, all because of the people out there who have been elected into positions supporting those who weren't elected and stuff, trying to put the narrative out there for them through different means and media, social media, so on and so forth. And then they got the nerve to go ahead and go against people like Tucker to lie on them and stuff and promote lies, kind of like what Shapiro did to Candace Owens recently. And yeah, we all know how that went. And right now, there's Shapiro stating, my words are taken out of context, and da-da-da-da-da. But at the same time, you said it without even giving clarifications. And you're only doing this only because, you got people actually speaking out against you.
Now, you are as good a witness as I could find on this issue. I have explained I have many Jewish friends who have questions about Tucker's coverage and whether, he's sort of turned into an anti-Semite. And I tell them all, absolutely not. I know Tucker very well, and he is not an anti-Semite. And he is not pro-Israel. He's not a big fan of Israel. And he's definitely not a fan of Netanyahu. But some of them say, well, I think it's beyond that. And I asked them all the same thing, Glenn. If you go back pre-10/7, do you remember Tucker being a leading Israel critic? Like, I remember you being an Israel critic. You're not anti-Semitic, but that was an issue that you definitely talked a lot about. Did Tucker? No, he didn't.
Never.
Tucker was, I don't know if he likes the word isolationist or not, but he was definitely sort of becoming the face of the isolationist right. And he had interviews. I remember the one he did with Viktor Orban in Hungary, and like they talked all about it. And then he was constantly saying, like, why would our kids have to go and fight this battle? Why are we being so bellicose about this particular issue? He's very hot against the Ukraine thing. He didn't want us to get dragged into that. That was long before 10/7. And then when 10/7 happened, he was like, I don't want to be involved in that one either. And that happened to be a very close ally that we felt was like getting us closer and closer to conflict. And then indeed, actually in conflict with Iran, which Tucker was against openly. Like if Tucker really just had this thing where like he can't stand Jews or he's long hated Israel, we would know, Glenn. He would have been out there saying this stuff before 10/7. The fact that it happened after that shows you it really is about Israel for him and dovetails perfectly with his more isolationist worldview and what he wants for America first.
Megyn, I am Jewish. My whole family's Jewish. I grew up Jewish. I'm steeped in Jewish culture and always have been my entire life. Tucker and I have a very close friendship. I mean, we used to hate each other, and then our politics started aligning, and then we got to know each other as people, and I consider him a very close friend. And I'm not here as a witness to say, oh, I'm Jewish and he's not an anti-Semite. But what I am here to say is that for me, the animating experience in Tucker's life in terms of his politics and journalism was the fact that he feels like he failed in his obligations and was betrayed when he constantly went on television and advocated for the war in Iraq and for broader neoconservative war-making policy that he believed is so destructive to the United States. He believed he helped spread lies about it. It led to the deaths of many people. And he feels determined never to make that mistake again, to kind of repent for the policies that he advocated that he believes were so destructive by sharing with everybody why he came to believe that they are so destructive. Now, I used to kind of needle Tucker about the fact that, oh, look, you go on Fox every night and you talk about how wrong it is that the United States spends billions of dollars to send to Ukraine. And I totally agreed with that. I was on his show all the time talking about that. But we do the same to Israel, yet you never mention that. You never once mentioned Israel. Why is that? And he would just sort of say like, oh, I don't think it's as important. We don't say. So he was actively like moving away from that.
Well, my friend just lost her ring. She went to replace it. She realized it was.
And that's another ad right here. But yeah, definitely excellent for Megyn Kelly and Glen Greenwald to go ahead and expose the campaign against Tucker Carlson and others. And the fact of the matter is that, you know, and of course I'm rewinding this because there's a part in this video that is really significant I want to get back to, where Glen Greenwald actually talks about the actual motive and everything. And Megyn Kelly also asked the right questions. And then they actually stated, you know, what the truth was that was actually happening. Okay. The truth is that censorship is all that they have to stand on. Okay. Tucker Carlson himself, he was, you know, at first pro-Iraq war, and then later on, he grew to learn more about it, ask more questions, and change his mind. And then Tucker Carlson also stated, as Glen Greenwald had said to Megyn Kelly, that, you know what, I don't think we should be giving our, you know, money to the land over in Eastern Europe, okay, for their war, okay? I don't think we should be sending money to them to support these. We should support the Americans and stuff and stay out of their business. I mean, that's the same thing that Glen Greenwald and Megyn Kelly are talking about. So go ahead, put this clip right back here to have them talk more about what they're discussing.
He's very hot against the Ukraine thing. He didn't want us to get dragged into that. That was long before 10/7. And then when 10/7 happened, he was like, I don't want to be involved in that one either. And that happened to be a very close ally that we felt was like getting us closer and closer to conflict. And then indeed, actually in conflict with Iran, which Tucker was against openly. Like if Tucker really just had this thing where like he can't stand Jews or he's long hated Israel, we would know, Glenn. He would have been out there saying this stuff before 10/7. The fact that it happened after that shows you it really is about Israel for him and dovetails perfectly with his more isolationist worldview and what he wants for America first.
You know, Megyn, I am Jewish. My whole family's Jewish. I grew up Jewish. I'm steeped in Jewish culture and always have been my entire life. And you know, Tucker and I have a very close friendship. I mean, we used to hate each other, and then our politics started aligning, and then we got to know each other as people. And you know, I consider him a very close friend. And I'm not here as a witness to say, oh, I'm Jewish and he's not an anti-Semite. But what I am here to say is that for me, the animating experience in Tucker's life in terms of his politics and journalism was the fact that he feels like he failed in his obligations and was betrayed when he constantly went on television and advocated for the war in Iraq and for broader neoconservative war-making policy that he believed is so destructive to the United States. He believed he helped spread lies about it. It led to the deaths of many people. And he feels determined never to make that mistake again, to kind of repent for the policies that he advocated that he believes were so destructive by sharing with everybody why he came to believe that they are so destructive. Now,
yeah, let's be honest. I'm pretty sure we've all been that way, where at least most of us, not all of us, have actually, you know, supported their war in Iraq. I was against it, but then again, back then I was left leaning and everything. And when I left the Democrat Party, I was still against the Iraq war. Okay. And the fact of the matter is, is that, Megyn Kelly with Glen Greenwald are actually doing a good job explaining, Tucker Carlson has always been this way, even Nick Fuentes. So Tucker Carlson interviewing Nick Fuentes is no different. I mean, Tucker is known for talking to people, and Megyn Kelly and even Glen Greenwald have both stated that, he would talk to people who would, are not even, aligned to his politics or associated with his politics. He talks to everybody. Okay. That's his job, as, the president stated when he was interviewing Nick Fuentes. So yeah, Glen Greenwald and Megyn Kelly definitely unpacked a lot of stuff in this particular clip. Let me know your thoughts about this in this Megyn Kelly and Glen Greenwald clip over at Tucker Carlson, Nick Fuentes, and I'll see you on the next one.